So Dogen is notoriously difficult to understand. So I'd like to give some background before we look at the text. So I want to look at a teaching of Mahayana Buddhism, sometimes called the two truths, but it's rather there's one reality. There's one rather massive reality happening, and it has two aspects. And these two aspects really affect our life. So one is relative truth, which is based on separating objects from each other, separating time, separating space. So this is called the conventional view that humans naturally do, both biologically, and our society really promotes the view of separation. Separation is great. It's been very effective for humans to create a pretty comfortable, wonderful way of living. At least it seems. Well, time will tell. And so awareness and knowledge of differences is both totally necessary and pretty wonderful to appreciate an object, pretty wonderful to relate to an object. Katagiri Roshi once said that relative truth is pretty important because you don't want to mistake miso paste for excrement. We need to have a judgmental capacity intact. Very, very wonderful, very helpful. The other truth, which I think is a little less common and somewhat counterintuitive, is the truth of oneness and connectedness. So everything only exists because everything else exists. We live in this world of separateness, but nothing has ever been separate from everything else. Everything exists simultaneously. We can also apply this to time, but it's a little easier to understand with objects. Objects are all on this earth together, all in this universe together, always have been. So from that point of view, there's never been separation. So both these aspects function continuously in our lives. And the Heart Sutra we just chanted really addresses this, that separateness and oneness are actually the same. We go, well, how can that be? They seem by definition totally opposite of each other. But to understand deeply, seemingly separate objects only exist because of oneness. That's form, is emptiness. The word emptiness is has kind of multiple meanings. My main go-to is we think separate objects, they exist, but we exaggerate the substantiality. We ignore the interconnectedness, and we especially ignore the impermanence. So form is not near as substantial as we posit it to be. So empty means free from, liberated from an exaggerated substantiality. So these very forms we posit are very impermanent, very totally interconnected. So they're kind of empty of all the exaggerated substantiality that we give them. But then at the same time, maybe this is a little harder to understand. There is no oneness. There is no emptiness without the forms. The forms are, in fact, the oneness. The forms are, in fact, the emptiness. But I think our suffering, human suffering, is exacerbated when we only focus on the separation aspect. Then it can make sense maybe to fight. Or sometimes fighting's a lot of fun, but fighting also causes a lot of suffering. So I think suffering is lessened when we realize and work with the oneness aspect. So Buddhism really presents the oneness aspect, not an exclusion of separateness, but as a necessary complementary understanding. So this has a pretty practical aspect in our lives, because we get confused. On the one hand, we experience our life as individuals, which is very naturally, individual. On the other hand, we're born into this world as part of a family. We perhaps want to be in a partnership. I call that the buddy system. We join an organization and we work together. We're in society together. We're in the biosphere together. So it takes practice to kind of work with balancing individuality and cooperation, oneness. And when separateness and individuality kind of overdominates, I can often see that that's causing problems. So that's why we have corrective sayings such as, there's no I in team. So of course there's an I, of course there is individuals, but we forget that. So we have to remind ourselves there's no I in team, so that we balance both aspects. So the study of oneness through Buddhism and the practice we do together here is sitting together, bowing together, chanting together, is really kind of a training, a corrective measure to help us balance cooperation and our sense of self. So this is all sounding pretty psychological, and Buddhist teachings quite psychological, but I think it's also helpful to just see from philosophically, metaphysically, just your basic life view, that the truth of the functioning of oneness and separateness is just a matter of fact. It's not some complicated Buddhist theory. It's just the way things are. We have oneness, we have separateness. My experience with the text we're going to study, GGU's MI, is that it was recited for noon service. So that was mainly during retreats when I practiced with Katagiri Roshi, and at Ramanji, it's recited for noon service. And earlier this year, I was able to be in San Francisco and stop by the San Francisco Zen Center for their noon service and lunch on a regular day, and they chanted GGU's MI for service. So I've appreciated this text for a long time, and I really like it. I think it's one of the more accessible of many Dogen's writings, which you may disagree with me as we read it, but that's what we're here to talk about. And then I hope I didn't communicate with Daishin about the subject of my talk, but next week we have the opportunity to study another Dogen's accessible essays or poems called the Genzo Koan. So maybe it'd be helpful to get this double dose of Dogen here. But as I said, studying Dogen is challenging for anyone. I had a student tell me once he picked up Dogen, tried to read it. He goes, this is incomprehensible. He put the book on a shelf. And he said he practiced Zazen regularly for 10 years. And he picked up the book again. He goes, oh, this makes some sense. So this is kind of the point of this essay, is that the practice of Zazen affects our understanding, it affects who we are. And I had one very helpful, had a chance to go to tea when Daido Lori Roshi, a very prominent American Zen teacher, since passed away, but I was able to talk with him. He brought up Dogen. He says, what you need to understand about Dogen is Dogen's constantly switching back and forth from the conventional view, separateness, to oneness, to the absolute. He switches back and forth in the middle of a sentence. He switches back and forth several times in one sentence. So having that pointed out to me made it really more enjoyable to read Dogen. Like, oh, here he's conventional view, and he kind of keeps the setting the same and switches to speaking of oneness. So let's start. Let me see if I can share the screen. We're gonna we can chant. I'm not sure if the time delay will affect me and people in person talking at the same time. We'll try it. Let's just recite. We're not really chanting. Let's just citing the first two paragraphs. Ancestors and Buddhas who have maintained the Buddha Dharma have all held that practice based upon proper sitting in Zazen and self-fulfilling samadhi was the right path through which their enlightenment opened. In India and China, those who have gained enlightenment have all followed in this way of practice. It is based on the right transmission of the wonderful means in private encounter from master to disciple, and their receiving and maintaining of its authentic essence. According to the authentic tradition of Buddhism, the Buddha Dharma, transmitted rightly and directly from one to another, is the supreme.
From the first time you meet your master and receive the teaching, you have no need for incense offerings, homage paying, chanting Buddha's names, penance disciplines, or silent considerations. Only cast off body and mind in Zazen.
Okay, I think it just works better when I listen to you chant. So thank you. So actually, I don't want to talk a lot about these first two paragraphs. It's the rest of the essay that I have a lot more to say about, but I will say he really stresses Zazen. So I kind of affectionately joke that Soto Zen is the Zazen only school of Zazen, of Buddhism, because we emphasize it so much. But Soto Zen offers many other activities, but a really strong point is Zazen offers an opportunity to have this pretty deep experience of reality. And then he talks a bit, he mentions the teacher-student. I talk a lot about that. It takes, for teacher-student, it takes both teacher and student, but I really stress the student. A teacher might have a certificate, but if there's no students, there's no teacher. So it's really based on effort of both, but it's based on effort of a student, but very naturally somebody new to practicing Zazen can be inspired and have confidence by people who have practiced it for a long time. And ideally, I use a little golf analogy, we keep each other out of the weeds and stay on the fairway. That's our teeing off for enlightenment here. Okay. Would you please recite the next paragraph, because that's really what I want to talk about. It starts when even for a short period of time
You sit properly in samadhi, imprinting the Buddha seal in deeds, words, and thoughts. Each and everything, excluding none, is the Buddha seal, and all space without exception is enlightenment. Accordingly, it makes Buddha Tathagatas all increase the Dharma joy of their original source and renew the adornments of the way of enlightenment. Then, when all classes of all beings in the 10 directions of the universe, the hell dwellers, hungry ghosts and animals, the fighting demons, humans, and devas, all together at one time, being bright and pure in body and mind, realize the stage of absolute emancipation and reveal their original aspect. At that time, all things together come to realization in themselves of the true enlightenment of the Buddha. Utilize the Buddha body. Immediately leave the confines of this personal enlightenment. Sit properly beneath the kingly tree of enlightenment. Turn simultaneously the great and utterly incomparable Dharma wheel, and expound the ultimate and profound prajna free from all human agency.
Thank you. So I need to give some explanation. So I decided to really study why this appeals to me so much. So I ended up, I actually color-coded the text with highlighters. And so I tried to analyze what he's saying, and I came up with there's four points he's making. So number one, I call results. So I'm really big on results. Results are great. We're going to do this practice. It'd be nice to have positive results. So he mentions those. So a paragraph where he, or very beginning says, imprinting the Buddha seal in deeds, words, and thoughts. Okay, I'll say the whole sentence. When even for a short period of time, you sit properly in samadhi, imprinting the Buddha seal in deeds, words, and thoughts. So sitting Zazen affects us very deeply. It affects how we act, affects how we speak, affects how we think, in a positive Buddhistic way. So right there is the result, but then he jumps to oneness. Each and everything excluding none, that's oneness, excluding none, is the Buddha seal. And all space without exception is enlightenment. Which gets to another his points that enlightenment already exists. It's all oneness, without separation, enlightened or not enlightened. Each and everything. So he, in all of space, is enlightened. So this is very, very oneness language. Another of the 4 points that he makes, results oneness. The other one I call beyond. So it's beyond our normal understanding. So later in this paragraph, he says, we immediately leap the confines of this personal enlightenment. It's beyond our personal. And the very last words of this paragraph, free from all human agency. So that's the third point he's always talking about, something beyond our normal understanding. Mainly oneness, maybe oneness and beyondness are pretty related because oneness is already a little bit beyond our normal understanding. But something I want to say about beyond. So in our group studying Katagiri Roshi's book, the light that shines through infinity, and we came across a section, he kind of lays out our path, what we experience as Buddhist practice. He says, it starts with precepts. So it starts with, I would say Buddhism starts with compassion. So it starts with caring, being concerned, and being curious, number one, about what we're doing, but also we're very concerned and caring about what other people are doing too. So we're like, this is confusing the way, what I'm feeling, how I'm acting, what in light of Buddhist teaching. So how can I kind of wake up to see what's going on because I care? And hopefully, I'm a little lacking on the curious sometimes, but hopefully we're curious. So what we do is pay attention to what's going on, pay attention to the present moment. A great book on the precepts is called Waking Up to What You Do by Diana Rizzetto. So very much mindfulness. It's also a quote, there's 3 important points in Buddhism: awareness, awareness, and awareness. So this is very foundational, is because we care, we're paying attention to what's going on in the moment. And that can kind of start with, I see my object, I'm here, my object, my teacup is there, so I'm very mindful. Beautiful green color on the inside of this teacup. Okay, but mindfulness will lead to the third thing. It's called samadhi. Oneness, emerging where self and other drop away. So sometimes we feel so good with human activities like dance and sports and appreciating beauty because really we've merged self has dropped away. And that experience, samadhi, is not something we can will. Like working with precepts, we have a sense of will. Working with mindfulness, we have a sense of will. But samadhi kind of naturally happens if we hang out. Mindfulness is kind of the edge of dropping into samadhi. We hang out there, maybe. So either gradually we merge at merging experiences, or sometimes people have a more profound one. So then samadhi is liberation, where we have a sense of being liberated. We've dropped this burden of a separate self that we're struggling with. It's liberation, enlightenment experience from a samadhi experience. These all flow into each other. But the fifth point, which is very important, is to be liberated from enlightenment, to be liberated from your liberation experience, because all of this is very alive. But if you have an experience and latch onto it, if you codify it, it's troublesome. So it's like not alive anymore. So an enlightenment experience that isn't let go of, it's kind of starts to rot. Katagiri Roshi was always pointing to his nose, going, "This stinky fellow." Use the word stinky. So we can't just stop with enlightenment. We have to go beyond. We have to let it go. So that is Dogen's big point on beyond. And then the fourth point he puts in here, calls it the original aspect. One member of our Sangha kind of complained about that, like original sounded like it was old, like in the past. Original means it's the foundation of what's happening right now. It's how things are. So maybe it's in the past, like a couple hundreds of seconds. So we experience perceptions, thoughts, and feelings, and then we kind of have this fog machine that gives them too much substantiality, brings up our karma, and kind of hides just the original, clear, basic aspect. So what Dogen does, so one mistake with Dogen is it looks like an essay, but it's really poetry. And this reminded me of music, like he has 4 notes that he's putting together here. Results, oneness, beyond, and the original aspect. So I want to go through this paragraph. I'm not going to do this for the whole essay, which might be a little tedious, but I'm going to point out the chord changes in this paragraph. So we already went through the first 2 lines. He switches from the results of imprinting Buddha seal to each and everything, which is oneness. And he goes, accordingly, it makes Buddha Tathagatas all increase the Dharma joy. Pretty nice result. Increasing our Dharma joy. And then he says, of their original source, throws in the original basic, and then he and renew the adornments of the way of enlightenment. And he goes to oneness. When all classes of all beings in the 10 directions of the universe, 10 directions, just another poetic way to say the whole universe. Then he goes through the 6 realms. Whoever people are always in one of the 6 realms. So all together at one time. So this is a strong statement of oneness. And it goes to being bright and pure in body and mind. And everyone realizes the stage of absolute emancipation. Pretty nice result. They reveal their original aspect. It's the original theme again. At that time, all things together comes to realize oneness. All things together come to realization of themselves, of the true enlightenment of the Buddha. They utilize the Buddha body. That's a result. Pretty nice. Immediately leap the confines of this personal enlightenment. It's beyond. Sit properly beneath the kingly tree of enlightenment, turn simultaneously the great and utterly incomparable Dharma wheel. It's a nice, I put that with oneness, and expound the ultimate and profound prajna, free from all human agency. So he goes beyond. So in a very condensed manner, he's making all these points. And kind of weaving together, results, suddenly like, hey, that's cool. Maybe that's about me. And then right away, he's just off on oneness. He's like, this is how everything exists, and not just you. Okay, the next paragraph's quite long. Are you up for reciting that?
Yeah.
Please. Let's see. And moreover, these enlightened ones in their turn
enter into the way of imperceptible mutual assistance. People in Zazen without fail cast out body and mind, sever the heretofore disordered and defiled thoughts and views emanating from discriminating consciousness, conform totally within themselves to the genuine Buddha Dharma, and assist universally in performing the work of Buddhas at each of the various places the Buddha Tathagatas teach, that are as infinitely numberless as the smallest atom particles, imparting universally the self-transcending Buddha, vigorously uplifting the Dharma transcending Buddha. Then the land, the trees and grasses, fences, walls, tiles and pebbles, all the various things in the 10 directions, perform the work of Buddhas. Because of this, all persons who share in the wind and water benefits thus produced receive the unperceived help of the Buddha's wonderful and incomprehensible teaching and guidance, and all manifest their inherent enlightenment, since all who receive and employ this fire and water turn round and round the teaching of original enlightenment. All who dwell and talk together with them also join with one another in sharing and unfolding the inexhaustible Buddha virtue, circulating the inexhaustible, unceasing, incomprehensible, and immeasurable Buddha Dharma, inside and outside throughout the universe. Yet such things are not mingled in the perceptions of one sitting in Zazen, because this occurs in the stillness of samadhi beyond human awareness, and is in itself realization each other. To be associated with perceptions is not the mark of realization, because the mark of realization is to be beyond such illusions.
Thank you. There's a lot of beyond in this paragraph. So he's saying, we don't believe this. People sitting in Zazen, we cast off body and mind without fail. Okay. Because it's already happening. We just don't, we don't have the habit of paying attention to. So the mind works, 100 instances in a second. So we're habitual to notice our thoughts and feelings of attachment and separation, but there already are moments where we've let it all go. We just haven't woken up to those moments. So he says we can sever our disordered and defiled thoughts emanating from discriminating consciousness. That's kind of samadhi. We kind of set ourselves up to be ready for samadhi. Like let's have an image of the mind. The base of the mind is like an empty stage, and then our karma and habits kind of pop up on this stage and disappear. But we can be attuned with just the basic awareness, our basic state. The wonderful thing about this paragraph is how our state of mind works together with the whole world, and the whole world's state of mind works together with us. So he talks about this relationship with inanimate objects, which he lists a few: land, trees, grasses, fences, walls, tiles, and pebbles. That represents everything we can recognize, everything. They're very much part of our awakening experience. So Buddha said, when Buddha awoke with the morning star, he said, I've achieved enlightenment together with all beings. The first thing he said. So I think people, if they're going to talk about enlightenment, they're not talking about all beings. Talking about maybe some kind of different kind of enlightenment. I don't know. The kind we're interested in is this connection with everything. So in one sense, he says, we're kind of practicing for the sake of everything. In the Zendo, you're practicing for the sake of the garden. That you're practicing for the sake of everything, and then everything else is also practicing. Everything is practicing for the sake of you. So it's pretty nice support. You can learn to be appreciative of, sometimes it's easier to see, a beautiful tree, and oh, thank you, beautiful tree, for bringing beauty. But everything is practicing for us from this point of view, and simultaneously. So the last part's it's a little shocking. When he talks about a state of consciousness Well, I think also we're supposed to be confused. He says, circulating the inexhaustible. Sometimes I think this sutra is inexhaustible and it goes on and on. An experiential study, unceasing, incomprehensible, and immeasurable Buddha Dharma. So this is way beyond our normal way of thinking. Then he goes as far in the last sentence to say, you're not perceiving this, you're not realizing it because it's prior to perception, it's beyond perception, it's beyond separation. So, this is a deep dive in oneness where, so as soon as we perceive something, I believe it exists, I believe it's real, but immediately my neurological system is filtering it according to my prejudices, according to these are Clusin glasses, and everything I see suddenly becomes kind of a manifestation of my individual experience, which is totally natural, totally understandable, because that's what created our nervous systems, is our individual experiences. What we're interested is a truth that's both prior to and beyond our thinking about it, which takes some getting used to. So my time's up. But I hope this encourages you to have a sense of what Dogen's talking about and to study it, take it in. Any, we have some time for questions and comments.
Sure. I'll start in. This is Pam. Thank you very much, Jodo. I really enjoyed this. I like this sutra. But I'm always hungry when I'm chanting it. You remind me very much, we had a Dharma study this spring on a book called Opening to Oneness, which is a book about the precepts. And looks at the yeah, that's the one. And studying that really gave me an appreciation for what you're saying about Dogen, how he leaps from the separate point of view to oneness and back again. And it also really opened my eyes to his sayings about the precepts, which were always incomprehensible to me until I looked at them from the standpoint of oneness. So it's very interesting to know that about Dogen, and I appreciate your point of view on that. Did anybody here have comments and questions for Jodo?
Hi, Jodo. Good morning. Thank you so much. Benji speaking. So is the idea, is samadhi something that we or I should try to get to? Could it be like a goal, or am I supposed to try to get to samadhi?
Traditionally in Zen, that's kind of set up. Dogen's point, the Mahayana teaching is it's already here. You already have it, and everything else already has it. But an analogy I did come up with studying with this is we have a fog machine, and we kind of can't help it. This is how we've lived our whole lives. I just came up with this fog machine, kind of, for just separateness and what about me? And and my samadhi, and what am I supposed to do? And counterintuitively, people have, we have deep experiences. Well, it's one reason we come back to Zazen. I mean, you're coming back because something in you is appreciating the silence, appreciating the letting go, appreciating just being present without subject and object. Part of facing a wall, there's, I don't have a lot of objects here to relate to. So what's the natural state of our life force? So studying this and practicing Zazen is yes, to wake up to samadhi. So that's a good goal. And then in order to wake up, we naturally loosen up our sense of self and our sense of measuring. Is that okay? Paula?
Well, Jodo, something you said, that it's beyond human agency. So in my mind, I felt like we can't make it happen.
Right.
And we can show up. We can sit down and show up and shut up or whatever, but we're almost inviting it.
Mhm.
And for me, it's a kind of grace, but we don't make it happen.
So I think believing in it, but through study, through practice, I don't want to say fake it till you make it, but I just said it. Anyhow, we've become familiar with the teaching, and sometimes it's blurred a little bit. Like I had this experience, but this is also kind of the way I think, so maybe well, anything we study over time, we start to adopt that view, and then we start to have corresponding experiences. So we still have a tinted glass view of reality, but it's a view that's more full of appreciation. It's more full of considering that everybody's enlightened. And I have had some neat experiences in a grocery store with lots of people where I'm pretty sure everyone here is enlightened. It looks like. Other times I have other judgmental experiences. But even when I have the judgmental experiences, I still have this kind of bedrock foundation of, yeah, I believe this stuff. I believe it's beyond my rationalization.
I guess I want to say we have our intention. As you say, we point our boat, but I don't think that we strive for it. I don't know. Maybe that's the razor's edge.
Well, we should study right effort. And that's, so different traditions, different teachers have a different emphasis on effort. I asked one teacher once, is effort kind of too big of a hammer? So we're letting go, we're being present, so we're open to it. So that seems pretty passive. But on the other hand, well, why not focus? Why not practice mindfulness the best we can?
that right?
Back to, yeah, like samadhi and what we were studying with the opening to oneness book. And so we talked, a lot about samadhi and to Benji's point of like, so wanting something other than like what is actually just happening moves you so far away from it because it's not the point. It's what you guys were saying about it takes away also from like the immediacy of what's happening. And Dogen was also really big on like immediacy. And what was that poem that was in there that I found really moving? I just remember the last line where he was just like, where he said, like wanting nothing with my whole body. Whatever that is, like whatever is happening. And even if it's not like some whiz bang experience, like that to me is samadhi, like just sitting and wanting absolutely nothing with your whole body and mind. And so you're just there and yeah. And so like, so wanting to like have some kind of like altered state of consciousness as a result of meditation seems to like defeat the actual purpose of meditation and moves you away from like the spirit in which like we should be sitting, because we're just creating the causes and conditions. That's all we're doing. And whatever happens, I guess.
So it's all a practice, both physically and mentally, of that middle ground of what's right effort. I don't know why my mind's on golf today. I haven't golfed in 30 years, but if you're gonna squeeze that club and tighten up, you gotta loosen up. And then if you loosen up too much, the club flies away with the ball. It's this is what we work on. What's our right effort in awakening?
Anyone else? Thank you, Jodo, so much.
Yeah,
Really
thank you, Jodo.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Have a closing chant.
Okay, closing chant, call and response. The many beings are numberless, vowing to carry them across.
The
many beings are numberless, vowing to carry them across.
Greed, anger, and ignorance rise endlessly, vowing to cut off the mind road.
Greed, anger, and ignorance rise endlessly, vowing to cut off the mind road.
Dharma gates are countless, vowing to wake to them all.
Dharma gates are countless, vowing to wake to them all.
Buddha's ways all embracing, vowing to follow through.
Buddha's ways all embracing, vowing to follow through.
Just a few announcements. Next next week, Daishin will be here. A lot of activities planned, including a calligraphy workshop, a Genjo Koan retreat. Both of those you need to register for. And some other activities for some precept students. And so check the website out. Let's see, any other thing I'm forgetting about that?
I think you got it.
And then today we do have a work practice scheduled. The Zen Center needs some cleaning. So Sharmila has brought an orange cake that we can enjoy with coffee and tea. And we'll go for about 15 minutes or so, and then maybe have 45 minutes of work practice for those who can participate. Anything else?
Thanks everybody for joining us. Jodo, thank you.
Thank you,
Yes.
Jodo.
Thanks, everyone. The cushion's back and we'll bow out.